The Colosseum. It's one of the wonders of the world and an international symbol of Rome, and yet I think a lot of people, including myself, didn't know too much about its history. Today, the Colosseum stands as a giant ruin, but for 4 centuries, it wasn't a ruin. It was the absolute center of the Roman world's entertainment. It was loud, it was brightly colored, and it was smelly. And yes, it was incredibly violent. Most people know one thing about the Colosseum. Gladiators fought here. And while that is true, that's like saying the only thing that happens at the Super Bowl is the halftime show. Today, we're gonna look past the Hollywood myths and we're gonna find out who built this giant thing and why they built it, the engineering that made it work, and some of the mind-blowing crazy stuff that happened inside. Welcome to the story of the Colosseum. Our story starts with a villain, well, a historical villain anyways, Emperor Nero. During the year 64 AD, Rome was victim to huge fires, and while he didn't actually start the fires, he definitely didn't let a good crisis go to waste. Nero cleared a huge section of downtown Rome, prime real estate that people needed to build himself the ultimate party pad, known as the Golden House. He even built a massive artificial lake right in the center, and the people of Rome were furious. Nero's extravagance eventually leads to his downfall, rightfully so, and after a messy civil war, a new emperor named Vespasian took over. He wasn't old aristocracy, he was a practical military man from the middle class, and he needed a massive PR win to prove he deserved to be emperor. He looked at Nero's private lake, and he had a brilliant idea. He would literally drain the lake, and in its place, build the world's largest public sports arena. This was a massive symbolic gesture. He was returning the heart of the city, which Nero had stolen for himself, back to the people. Construction began around 72 AD, and it was a masterpiece of engineering. I mean, Romans used their secret weapon, concrete, which isn't the stuff that you would imagine today, but rather a unique mix of volcanic ash that could set underwater. They built arches upon arches, allowing them to go high without the walls collapsing under their own weight. So how did this massive thing work? It could hold between 50,000 and 80,000 spectators. Think of a modern stadium's design. It hasn't changed much in 2,000 years. The genius was in the crowd control. It had 80 arched entrances. Your ticket was a piece of pottery, which would have a number on its corresponding to one of the arches. And you could enter, find your section, and sit down without any bottlenecking. Experts estimate the entire building could be evacuated in minutes. Where you sat was everything. This wasn't just entertainment, it was a physical model of Roman society. The best seats, right on the arena floor, were reserved for the emperor, senators, and vestal virgins. Above them were the wealthy knights, and above them, the regular male citizens. And way at the top, in the steep wooden bleachers, sat the women, poor, and slaves. It even had air conditioning, kind of. At the very top, Roman sailors operated the Velarium, a massive retractable canvas that could shade the entire stadium. But the real magic happened underneath the sand. There was the Hypogeum, a 2-story underworld of tunnels, cages, and machinery. It didn't exist when it first opened, but it was added later by Vespasian's second son, Emperor Domitian. They used massive windlasses and pulley systems operated by hundreds of slaves to lift animals, gladiators, and scenery directly through trapdoors and onto the arena floor. Imagine the surprise. One moment you're looking at empty sand, the next a full-grown forest and 4 hungry lions seem to rise from the ground. Oh, and that name, why do we call it the Colosseum? Well, it's not because it's colossal or anything like that, it's because of a statue. You see, Nero had built a massive 100-foot tall statue of himself, the Colossus of Nero, right next to where the amphitheater was built. So subsequent emperors changed its face, but the statue stayed, and by the Middle Ages, the building next to the Colossus just became known as the Colosseum, and the original name of the Flavian Amphitheater was forgotten. So you've got your ticket, you're in your seat, what are you watching? A day at the games had a very strict schedule. The morning were for the Venationes, or animal hunts. This was a display of Roman power over nature. They would create massive, elaborate stages, desert oases, dense forests, and release animals from the edges of the empires. This wasn't a fair fight, it was a slaughter designed to show Romans conquering the world. Thousands of animals died in just a single day. The North African elephant and Atlas lion were hunted to near extinction just for these spectacles. And at midday, during the lunch break, the executions happened. This was meant to be a deterrent. Criminals and prisoners of war would be forced to fight each other without armor or simply left in the arena to be mauled by the remaining beasts. Often, these executions were staged as dramatic reenactments of gory myths. The afternoon was the main event, the gladiators. This is what you know, but let's bust 3 big myths while we're talking about it. So, myth number 1, gladiators were ripped, muscular, bodybuilder types. In reality, they were actually on the bigger side. Romans called them horderi, which translates to barley men. They ate a strict, high-carb diet of barley and beans. But this was actually intentional. By having a little bit of fat, it was organic armor. The fat protected their major blood vessels and nerves from shallow sword cuts, allowing them to bleed a lot for the crowd's entertainment without actually taking fatal damage. Another myth you might have heard is that every fight ended in death, and this was actually false. You see, gladiators were incredibly expensive to train, house, and feed. They were like star athletes. You didn't want your $1 million investment dying in his second match. Most fights ended when one gladiator was defeated and submitted by raising his finger. Another myth you might have heard of were gladiators were just slaves who were forced to fight in obscurity. But in reality, they were the absolute rock stars of ancient Rome. And while many were slaves, some were freemen who volunteered just for the fame and prize money. They had massive fan clubs, children played with clay gladiator action figures, and successful fighters even had brand endorsements. In fact, gladiator sweat and blood were bottled and sold at high prices to Roman women to use as perfume and facial cream. Oh my god, this sounds like bottled bathwater. I'm gonna stop there. So we know about the gladiators and we know about the hunts, but ancient sources tell us about things that happen here that make us ask, how is that even possible? So first and foremost, this video is actually spawned because I had heard that they used to flood the arena and have giant battles in the water. And turns out, yeah, they actually freaking flooded the arena. Early in its history, before the Hypogeum was built by Domitian, they could redirect water to fill the arena's basin to a depth that allowed full-scale naval battles. Ancient accounts tell us that full fleets of ships crewed by condemned prisoners would reenact famous sea battles for the entertainment of crowds. Perhaps the craziest thing wasn't an event, but a person. Emperor Commodus, yes, the villain from the movie Gladiator, in real life. He actually fought in the arena. Ancient historians say he was obsessed with it. He would dress as Hercules and fought and won hundreds of gladiator matches. Now, the twist to that is his opponents were either terrified and threw the fight, or he handicapped them. He was also supposedly killing thousands of animals, including ostriches, giraffes, with arrows from the safety of his private box. He once fought against 100 gladiators on a single day and won every time. His opponents knew the penalty for beating the emperor was death. So the games continued for centuries, but they were eventually stopped. And the reasons were a mix of changing tastes, a declining economy that couldn't support the enormous costs, and the rise of Christianity, which eventually outlawed gladiatorial combat in the 5th century. After the games ended, the Colosseum fell into neglect. It was damaged by major earthquakes, most notably in 1349, which caused a huge portion of the outer wall to collapse. And for the next few centuries, it wasn't seen as a monument, it was seen as a free quarry. The precious marble on the outside and heavy stone blocks were stripped away and reused to build other buildings throughout Rome, including some of the Vatican's St. Peter Basilica. Today, the Colosseum stands not just as a monument of engineering, but as a complicated mirror, and reminds us of a Roman civilization that could build wonders that last thousands of years, but that also created a society where watching thousands of people and animals die was just an average Friday afternoon. So the next time you see a picture of this majestic ruin, just remember that it was more than just a fight club. It was the heart of an empire and had a complicated and deep history. Thanks for watching.